Again, welcome and thank you for joining tonight. The first thing I'm going to offer is a disclaimer on the title. There is an alliance forming. We're still toying with different name possibilities. So Global Wellbeing Alliance is the current name. It may end up being called something different, but that's the name we'll use for tonight. And that one of the things I like about that name is if you take well-being and alliance, then it forms the name we all. And that's really at the heart of what we're doing here. It's moving from I to we to all. And our vision is co-creating a better civilization. I like to joke that solving world hunger was not a big enough problem for us. But I'm actually only half joking when I say that. Because we do think that the problems that we face in the world today are so interconnected and intertwined that you can't really solve some of these problems in isolation. And I'll go through that in a bit more. But clearly an ambitious vision, a very big picture. So the other thing I'll mention about this is where we're really focused is on accelerating what's emerging. So we believe that there is a number of people all around the globe who are waking up to what's going wrong and more importantly, spontaneously contributing many powerful ideas. And that's the group of people that we're aiming to connect with and to accelerate the agency for. So in other words, rather than trying to change the existing world, we're trying to create a new one that makes the existing world obsolete, to paraphrase Bucky Fuller. So before we get into it, having put that lofty vision there, I want to make it clear that if you came here expecting the answer, you're not going to hear it. We don't claim to have the answer. We don't even claim that we can have the answer. But what we do believe is that you have the answer, along with many others around the globe. And so what we really aim to do is provide a vessel on which you, individually and collectively, can take the journey that you sense you are being uniquely called to take. So that's a way to frame this, not as the answer, but as a vessel that's available for us to take this journey together. But vessels are pretty cool. If you look at the HMS Beagle, for example, that was pretty instrumental in the origin of species and the theory of evolution. And of course, Columbia and Eagle took Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins to the moon and back. And of course, John Masefield, all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. So what I'd like to do at this point is offer an invitation just to take a brief pause. Take a few deep breaths. Maybe have your feet on the floor. Center in whatever way you've found has been effective for you. Move your consciousness into your heart center. With your breathing, allow space for what is wanting to emerge through you. We're going to take a short moment of silence in which I invite you to look in your heart for the journey that you sense that you are being called to take. You uniquely are being called to take. It may be a journey that you're already on. It may have been clear to you what your purpose was in this shift, and you're in the middle of it and activating it. That's great. Or you may be confused. You may feel unclear. Wherever you're at, just take a few moments to feel into that space and search your heart for what's wanting to emerge in you right in this moment. I'm going to play a short clip. And when you hear the chime, then we'll return to talking.
It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew?
I'd like to encourage you, if something came to you about what's wanting to emerge in you, to go ahead and type it into the chat window, whatever came up for you there. And that was Drew Dellinger, brilliant poet, with that clip. So everybody on this call knows me to one extent or another, but some of you are coming through different parts of my story. So I'm just going to quickly summarize my story. I've got a master's in computer science, spent my professional career as a developer, as a technical lead, as an architect in various flavors, systems architect, solution, enterprise, and so forth. I've led development teams. I've led the development of both business applications as well as platforms. In the 80s, I led a technology development team developing relational database management system technology and later object-oriented database technology. I've also worked at an enterprise level articulating and driving architectures and strategies. For the last 25 years, it's been with big companies. I spent 10 years at US West, now Quest, a big phone company, 10 years at Sun Microsystems, 5 years at Oracle. A lot of background and roles in leadership of enterprise architecture. Worked on very large projects, hundreds of people, billion-dollar plus projects. Been doing work in the outside-in business process management space. So that's my professional path, but I've also had a spiritual path. I was raised as a Christian Scientist. I had a spontaneous healing experience in my early teens. My undergraduate degree was in philosophy. I had a deep, direct experience of oneness in 1975. I felt I could actually, I felt the interconnectedness of everything. I found I could move my consciousness into different beings, stone beings and plant beings and so forth, in a way I can't really articulate. Those of you that have had similar experiences know what I'm talking about. Spent many years being enlightened by a number of different spiritual teachings and ongoing experiences, personal practices. Spent 6 months in Barbara Marx Hubbard's Generation 1 class. And through all of that, I was aroused to play a role in the conscious evolutionary shift, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so I kind of characterize it with this graphic of I had my professional path and I had my spiritual path. And there was this tension between the two. This is going on for 30 years. Last January, on January 8th, I left Oracle and was able to bring these two paths together. And I experienced that as a deep exhale. I was holding tension in myself that I never even knew existed until I brought those two pieces together. And since that time, it's been really, really exciting. I've just been blessed by how the universe has responded to my inquiry about what role I could play, meeting amazing people, and many of them are on this call, being introduced to amazing additional teachings and practices, and lots of cool stuff happening in the world. So it's been a very creative period for me as well, and a lot of fun. And I will mention, one of the catalysts for this was hearing Drew Dillinger. The piece that I played was an excerpt from a poem that he read when he was at the Institute of Noetic Sciences conference last summer in Chicago. And that question of what did you do once you knew, it just went straight to my heart. And I realized at that point I couldn't continue with this dual path. I had to bring them together. And I'm fortunate that on January 8th I was able to do that. So, create a new civilization. Well, how did we get there? How do we get where we are today? So it starts at the Big Bang and moving up to today. 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth formed. A little while after that, life began and genetic evolution began. And then about 2.5 million years ago, there was another significant event. It seems evidence about that time frame that the first tools were used. And that really marks the beginning of cultural evolution. And for a long time, our ancestors were nomadic hunter-gatherers. About 200,000 years ago, the first Homo sapiens species emerged. And then about 60,000 years ago, we believe spoken language emerged. And that was a great leap forward. And we entered what we're referring to as the mythical stage of culture. 10,000 years ago or so, the first cities began to be formed. And about 5,000 years ago is really when we date civilization beginning. That's when written language, power structures, the ability to move large materials, do things like creating pyramids and so forth. So that's some context about how we got here. Sometimes we experience what we have today as if it would always been here, and that's just the way it is. But this kind of places this in context that we're actually on an arc that's still evolving. So what is civilization and what did it bring to the world? Well, in that period, since in the last 5,000 years, as we've seen lots of structured, interconnected systems, highly structured cities. Hierarchy was introduced, both socially and economically, patriarchal, top-down power structures, powerful militaries, concentration of wealth, many, many innovations in writing, government, economic systems, laws, legal systems, and so forth. Powerful military capabilities. And with it came an ability to exploit nature and manipulate the physical world. And so all of that basically is the manifestation or the fruits, if you will, of the material stage of culture. Well, how's it working? Well, we believe we're closing out a 5,000-year stage of history and culture that served its purpose. I mean, those were enormous steps forward and enormous accomplishments. But the model on which civilization has been built, we believe, is now becoming obsolete. So can we co-create a better civilization? And we think we can, and we're hoping you will help us do it. What does that mean by co-creating a better civilization? Well, what we're looking at is a civilization that is life-affirming and regenerative in the biosphere, one that ensures the basic rights and needs of all people, that promotes the sovereign freedom and creativity of all individuals. That turns out to be a really powerful principle that will inform a lot of what you'll see coming on, is that notion that everybody has a role to play, everyone is creative, and everyone is entitled to their own autonomy and freedom. A better civilization works for everyone, and in that civilization, everyone has a role to play. It supports the evolution of humanity, and it energizes and drives collaborations that are built on compassion into meaningful impact and right livelihood. Right livelihood being the alignment of what we do to put food on the table, shelter overhead, and take care of our families, aligning that with our deepest callings of our heart. And this civilization depends on well-being at multiple levels. There's personal well-being in body, mind, and spirit, collective well-being in families and tribes, organizational well-being, the creation of life-affirming organizations that are healthy and conscious, and ultimately global well-being, interconnected, whole earth living systems. So those of you familiar with integral theory will recognize we're saying that change needs to happen in all four quadrants. Those that are unfamiliar with it, the row in this 2x2 matrix that I showed represents the individual, the top row, and the bottom row represents the collective. The left-hand column represents the interior or subjective reality, and the right-hand column represents the objective reality. So between that, you have these four quadrants. And so we think the change has to happen in all four. So what are some of the core values on which this civilization is built? At the very core is oneness. You know, if we almost don't need to talk about any other values, because it seems that the illusion of separation is at the core of the thought forms that have shaped our civilization to this point. And a return to the recognition of our fundamental oneness is really at the heart of the change that we think is emerging. Basic human rights, responsibility and accountability, cooperation, collaboration, and co-creation, models for working together. And finally, recognition that evolution is ongoing. So we're not just stuck with what we have. We're not finished products. We're really in a dynamic time. So with that as sort of a context of how we got here, a quick outline for the talk here. Call to action. We're going to look at a little bit of the lessons of evolution. We're going to then go into the Global Wellbeing Alliance story, sort of the why, what, how, and who. And we'll sprinkle in some transformational stories to make it a little less dry and conceptual and more concrete. And then we'll close with how we can all co-create together, activating your inner calling, and if you like what you hear, how you, in this talk this week and next week, how to engage with the Global Wellbeing Alliance. So let me just make a quick check of the chat here. I noticed some people came in. Beautiful. Time to wake up, says Brian. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Simplicity from Deborah. Transmitting healing light and principles of evolutionary relationships from Diane. And Save the Birds came to mind, and all the things that fly around. Beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. So, call to action. These next several slides, I owe a debt of gratitude to Hunter Levins, whose picture you see here. Very dynamic woman, brilliant co-author of the book Natural Capitalism, founder with Amory Levins and Paul Hawken of the Rocky Mountain Institute, a real force for change in the world. She put together these slides and kindly allowed me to use them. What you see here is basically the havoc of the Anthropocene. That's a word that, for those that may not be familiar with it, that is beginning to emerge in scientific circles as a characterization of our current epoch. We've moved into a period in evolution where human beings are actually the greatest force for change on the planet, and not, unfortunately, in a good way. There's a study that NASA did called the Human and Nature Dynamical Study, the HANDY study. They looked at civilizational collapse and discovered it had happened actually many times in the past. And they were able to identify two features that seem to be common to the prior civilizational collapse episodes. The first is outstripping resources, stretching the resources beyond what they can handle. And the second is economic stratification of society into small number of elites and a large number of poor. So they've played a role in the prior civilization collapses, according to the NASA study. So let's look at how we're doing today on those metrics. And I'm going to state things here. I'm offering quotes from various scientific studies. I know people have varying degrees of belief in what I'm going to be saying. It's not essential that you agree with my characterization of what's happening in the world today. But I'm in the place of being completely convinced that we are in a crisis. I am therefore activated myself personally to not sit on the sidelines on this one. But I think there's lots of evidence to suggest we've exceeded the carrying capacity of our planet. We've used 50 to 70% of the organic material that took 10,000 years to build. We've burned through that in 100 years. Our fish stocks are depleted. The groundwater tables are falling, so we're using up our liquid resources. Grasslands, which are a critical part of our ecosystem. I just was at a talk from the Savory Institute a few weeks ago. Their research shows that 70% of the grasslands on the planet are now seriously degraded. The ocean acidification is increasing. Climate change, significant evidence that we've already blown past the UN cap limits. Glad they finally put them, that we were able to reach an agreement at COP21, but unclear how we're going to stay within the levels of warming that they set as the targets. And we also see that climate change hurts the poorest first. So this is an example of where you can't really separate environmental justice from social justice. They're intertwined. And wealth polarization is extreme. The 85 richest people, same wealth as 3.5 billion of the poorest people. So we've checked both the boxes, outstretching our resources and extreme polarization of wealth. The difference this time is that we're looking at global civilizational collapse, not just local civilizational collapse. The Pope says it's a moral imperative, both the human-induced climate change and also the extreme poverty. So he's speaking to both poles. So what have we learned from evolution? Barbara Marx Hubbard, this is her story of creation with the wheel of co-creation in the middle. Quote from her, every evolutionary quantum leap is preceded by crisis, chaos, and breakdown. So we're certainly seeing the crisis, and in the past, when there's been a crisis, there has been an evolutionary response. And in each case, that evolutionary response has led to a quantum leap, new structures exhibiting in a higher degree of interconnected complexity, greater scales of cooperation, and higher degree of consciousness. So that's the good news. And it's our turn. And what we're seeing is that, in fact, change is spontaneously emerging across the globe in response to this crisis. We're seeing what we refer to as memetic shifts in every sector of human endeavor. At its root, as I mentioned earlier, is a shift from the illusion of separation to the recognition of our fundamental oneness and the interconnectedness of all life. In the infrastructure space, we're seeing the emergence of holistic, closed-loop, systemic views of air, water, food, and soil. We're moving from not just sustainable, but to restorative and even regenerative systems. And the internet is emerging as sort of a form of planetary nervous system, enabling degrees of connection unprecedented. In the justice sector, we're moving from models of punitive justice to restorative justice, more participative media, relationships featuring wholeness and reciprocity, and emerging views of relationships where we're looking at how nature has evolved relationships, for example, at a cellular level. And blessed to have on the call tonight Diane Tegetmeier, who's written a brilliant book on just this topic of natural relationships and how we can apply from a sort of a biomimicry standpoint, lessons learned from how cells interact and apply those to human relationships at different scales. Science is emerging from its traditional materialistic mechanistic view that held sway for most of the last 500 years. It's recognizing the role of consciousness as an inseparable component of understanding our universe. Spirituality is becoming more interdenominational. The arts, we're seeing greater social engagement, and beginning to emerge this concept that everyone is an artist, everyone is creative, and everyone has a story to tell. In economics, we're moving from linear flows to the cradle-to-cradle concept, closed-loop systems where the things are designed to be infinitely recycled as opposed to just being downcycled. In the education, more experiential, more student-driven, less top-down, just lecture. In the environment, a recognition that we're all in this together. New forms of governance, patient-centered and wellness-driven and more holistic.
Okay, so the message here is spontaneous change is
health.
emerging, as it always has in response to crises. And as I looked around, I was blessed to come across a number of visionaries and thought leaders that are out there advancing this, the thought, if you will, in each of those sectors. And they're doing it by creating their own websites and their own email subscription lists and their own blogs and webinars and so forth. And at least my view is the progression of outcomes that they seem to be trying to create in people. Oh, great, my phone is ringing. Hang on a second. There we go. They're trying to create a progression of outcomes. And they're aiming at people who are stirred by a vague sense that the current systems aren't working. I mean, if you believe that the world is just fine, you're doing just fine, stay the course, then you're probably not going to be paying much attention to these evolutionary leaders. But if you have this sense that things aren't working and you're not sure why, then you're right to be awakened. So these leaders seem to be aiming at awakening both an interconnection to source, a deeper sense of consciousness, a deeper awareness of oneness, of the interior experience, or connection to evolution, as well as awakening people to the external sense of really the global and systemic nature of our crises and the possibility that alternate systems are out there. And having been awakened, then people are hungry for more information. So they want a more complete understanding of both sort of that inner experience and practices, personal practices that allow them to explore the inner consciousness realm, as well as more informed about, again, the systemic nature of our crises and some of these new emerging models. And having been informed, there's a yearning for connection. So a desire to find others who are beginning to wake up to what's happening and, form connections. But there seem to be some limitations of the current state from my perspective. Collaboration and co-creation among those leaders is limited.
Significantly, the engine of commerce, which is, if you look at the biggest agency of change on the planet, which is global business, it's global, it's heavily interconnected, and of course it's garnering lots and lots of investment. Whereas those of us that are on the emerging front of evolutionary change are pretty much largely operating independently. I see each of these leaders going it alone in their own silos. They have little in the way of shared infrastructure. And their attempts at collaboration, they're well-meaning, they don't seem to have been particularly successful. And I've heard many of them complain about that very state. Furthermore, there seems to be a need to go beyond just the awakened, informed, and connected outcomes. Those are all relatively passive outcomes. And once you've been awakened and informed and connected, as happened for me and many, many others, there's this yearning to discover, what can I do? What is my role in this shift? I get that we're in crisis. I get that there's new models. What can I do? How can I leverage my own unique skills and experience in life situation and so forth? What's my role? And when you're in that place, just getting more awakened and informed and connected doesn't really scratch that itch. So we think what's needed is a greater sense of agency, and at a planetary scale, a greater sense of impact in the world. Our problems are global. Our solutions need to be global. So for those that are ready to take action, how can we enable and empower them? And this takes us to the Global Wellbeing Alliance story. So the first several bullet points here are sort of a recapitulation of what we just went through. Humanity is creating a crisis for itself. The issues are systemic and global. Every leap is preceded by crisis, chaos, and breakdown. Spontaneous changes are emerging. That's the good news. But synergistic convergence of those efforts is required, and a greater sense of agency. So the Global Wellbeing Alliance, whose vision is to co-create a better civilization, is kind of focusing on these 5 points. The first is facilitating the cultural shifts that are necessary. At its heart, we're in a crisis of consciousness. It's our worldviews, it's our deeply held assumptions that inform our institutions and systems that are really at the root cause of our problems. And so it's only by shifting our worldview that we can shift the world. We also want to support the emergence of both requirements and designs for a better civilization. You know, this is a pioneering process. We're going to get it wrong many times. So we need ways of trying out our understanding and testing our understanding of what we need to do and how to do it. We need to tell the story. So the Alliance hopes to help get the information out there through communication and outreach and connection, engagement, inspiration. And then really activate the shift. So move from those awaken, informed, connect outcomes into a planetary sense of agency to actually implement the designs and ultimately support the emergence of conscious organizations and interconnected evolutionary enterprises. So pretty much everything I'm going to be talking about for the remainder of tonight and the next session is going to be around those 5 points. So this might be a good point in time to check in. Do we have any questions? And if, Roger, do we have any questions?
Nothing in the chat window that's new that you didn't see before.
Okay. Again, I would encourage you to, if anything's unclear or you want to challenge it or you just have questions about it, feel free to type that in the chat. Or if you have comments, if something really resonates with you, I'd love to hear that as well. So I'll move on. So what are the Global Wellbeing Alliance values? The first is to honor people where they are, which goes hand in hand with this sort of pull versus push. So everything we're doing here is built on, again, this notion of personal autonomy, sovereign freedom. So we don't want to impose solutions. We think the right model is to offer services and let people that have a need pull the services that they feel are of use to them. And that's based on personal freedom, belief that every individual is the author of their own personal journey, and supporting each individual's highest creative expression. I think if we do that, we'll be good. We're moving away from a concept of ownership to one that embraces accountability and ultimately stewardship. Stewards have a temporary relationship with the resources that are in their care, and not an ownership relationship. And finally, we want to leverage evolutionary markets. So our view is that competition is not bad per se. That's perhaps a bit controversial for some, but we think the issue is not competition. In fact, competition has been a feature of evolution since day one. The dance of cooperation and competition is what has fueled evolutionary change. But we think the question is, what are we competing for? And we think the problem is not competition, but that today so many are competing just to maximize quarterly profits. But what if we were competing to co-create the greatest good for the entire planet? What if that is what we are competing to come up with the best ideas for the greatest good for the whole planet? And so with that, we've arrived at a theory of change that we refer to the expanding spiral of outcomes. And so what you see here is the outcomes that we previously talked about. People move from some degree of disillusionment to being awakened, from awakened to informed, from informed to connected. So each of those is a transformation. And as we said, we think many are looking to go beyond those outcomes. So we've labeled the next one activated to your own personal purpose. What is my role in all of this? And then getting organized to increase your agency. You're not acting alone, you're acting within an organization of others. And finally, interconnecting those organizations globally to create interconnected enterprises. There's always some new degree of disillusionment that emerges really in any of these transformations. So there's always a return, not to where you were, but a spiral to a new degree of disillusionment from which we need to be awakened, informed, connected, activated, organized, and interconnected. So we see this as a perpetually unfolding spiral. The downward flow is focused on the subjective and the individual outcomes, so the I quadrant from an AQual perspective, and a focus on a deeper sense of being, a deeper sense of groundedness in consciousness and oneness. And the upward spiral is towards the collective, the objective outcomes, more to the we, it, and its quadrants. And its focus is on a greater sense of agency. So you could think about that as being a focus on doing. And it seems that the depth of being limits the impact of doing. So to get to that next level of doing requires a deeper connection into being. So that dynamic, that tension is always there and vital. So the Global Wellbeing Alliance aims to help with each of these transformations. This is kind of what we're taking as our problem statement or as our challenge. It's the opportunity to look at each one of these transformations and say, what could we do to aid the emergence of that transformation? Looks like Kathleen is in full resonance with everything we're expressing here. That's a better competition. I agree. Thank you, Kathleen. So this is our change model. And those are the transformations we're enabling. So great, how are you going to go about doing this? So at this point, I'll introduce the Memetic Activation Platform, or MAP. What is it? Well, the first statement I'd make about it, I've been working in Fortune 100 companies, as I mentioned. And originally I was challenged to figure out how I could contribute to this because I didn't see Fortune 100 companies out there on the cutting edge of what's emerging. But the key breakthrough in my mindset, in my worldview, was the recognition that we could interconnect. We don't need to create another Fortune 100 company. What we need to do is interconnect the evolutionaries by giving them a computing platform that's comparable in power and sophistication and reach to that Fortune 100 companies enjoy. It's a platform that would enable the emergence of entirely new kinds of planetary enterprises, each of which is a bold endeavor that's shaped by a consciously selected memetic signature. That might seem like an abstract concept. I'm going to really try and make that more concrete as we go. But it's basically, what are the deep underlying assumptions? Today, many of them are hidden. The idea is to bring them out in the open and consciously select the assumptions, the principles, the values, the models on which organizations get created. And these enterprises consist of globally interconnected, autonomous, self-organizing organizations and individuals that are explicitly aligned to the memetic signature of the enterprise of which they are members. And all of that is focused on manifesting the shift to a world that works for all, with reverence for nature as a deep source of learning where no one is left out and everyone has a role to play. So I told you I'd sort of unpack memetic signature. Let's start with the root of it, which is memes. And what you see here is a picture of Richard Dawkins. He actually coined the word in 1976. It's become popularized recently on the internet in rather frivolous ways. And he says, people keep using the word, but they're not really using it in the way that the person who coined it intended it to be used. So memes were inspired by genes, which are self-replicating, mutating, recombining units of biological traits. Whereas memes are self-replicating, mutating, and recombining units of culture. So memes carry ideas, symbols, practices, anything that could be transmitted from one mind to another through any of those methods. That's a meme. They're all around us. We're swimming in them. They're so ubiquitous we don't see them, much like the fish swimming in the water isn't aware of the water. I pulled a couple of quotes out here, though, that I thought were particularly powerful and relevant. The first is that it's a new kind of replicator. So according to the science of memetics, genes were the first replicator, and genes drove billions of years of evolution. And in that period of time, it's only recently, probably in the last 2.5 million years, and really in an accelerated pace in the last 5,000 years, that a new kind of replicator emerged. So evolutionarily speaking, it's still in its infancy. We're still casting about in it, but it's already driving evolutionary change. The pace of evolutionary change over the last 5,000 years, the last 500 years, the last 100 years is easy to see that pace is accelerating dramatically, and it's moving at a pace much, much faster than genes, genetic evolution. And this is just sort of by analogy, just as genes propagate themselves in the gene pool by leaping from one body to another via sperms or eggs, memes propagate themselves by leaping from brain to brain through imitation. So that were a couple of quotes from 1976. So let's try and make that a little bit more concrete. What I'm showing here is a partial memetic signature. So I've kind of used the double helix here to sort of connote the connection to DNA. But imagine an organization that was committed to expressing the principles of fair trade and have been certified as such. They are expressing the cradle to cradle concepts. So they look at not just what does it take to get the product to the customer, but the full loop of what happens to the product after the customer has it. What happens, can we set up infinite recyclability through different nutrient streams, whether they be technical nutrient streams or organic nutrient streams. So a company that's committed to that, a company that's, as part of its code, it's part of its internal operating procedures, embraces social justice, restorative justice. It's a certified type B corporation, meaning it has a responsibility not just to profit, but actually a legal responsibility to profit people and planet. It uses holacracy as a decision and governance model. It discloses its carbon footprint to the Carbon Disclosure Project. It recognizes that the debt-backed positive interest rate currencies, which underlie all national currency systems, have deep and powerful and deleterious effects on civilization. They create a scarcity consciousness. They're at the root of this sort of accelerating growth model that we can't seem to, we can't imagine an economy in which growth isn't happening. And yet runaway growth in the rest of nature is unhealthy, to say the least. So an organization that is adopting a complementary currency, the same organization uses renewable energy for all of its internal and external training needs. It embraces experiential education. And to tell its story in evocative and emotionally connecting ways, inspiring ways, it embraces social art. So the basic idea here is that an organization, and this is a fictional one, but it gives you an example of what such a signature might look like. On this Memetic Activation Platform, organizations can register themselves. And part of that registration process, they record their memetic signature in the map. And having done so, then people can search, if you're looking to buy something, you can search the map for the product you want, but also include your own memetic profile, if you will, the values you care about, and apply that as a filter so that you're locating products and companies that are aligned with your values. And similarly, if you're looking for livelihood, you can search for organizations that are aligned with your values. So how would you feel? And I'd invite you to go inward and consider this for a moment. How would you feel? What does your heart tell you about working for or buying from an organization that manifested all of these memes? So I'm going to do a little bit of a technical deep dive and to go into sort of the fundamental concepts. There's three principal databases, and I'm still playing with the terms. I sometimes refer to this as the party database, but from an alliance perspective, sometimes I want to refer to them as allies. But the key thing here, it doesn't matter what the name is, the key thing is that this database is a registry of both people and organizations. And those organizations can be groups of people or groups of other organizations, which are groups of people. So it's a recursive structure, if you will. And so when I use the term party or ally, rather than always saying person or organization or individual organization, when I use the term party or ally, what I mean is either a person or an organization. And the second major database is the meme pool. And so at the heart is a meme. Memes can be associated to sectors. And here I'm using that wheel of co-creation, that 12-sectored wheel that Barbara Marx Hubbard created, because it's a very broad spectrum of human endeavor. So memes can be associated to one or more sectors. Memes can also be grouped, and they come in different flavors. So there's meme families. Meme plexes are like gene complexes. Gene complexes, that's a term that refers to genes that it's found that when they replicate together, they're more successful than when they each replicate individually. So analogy then, a memeplex is a collection of memes that individually may not replicate so well, but when you put them together, the combination replicates very well. And then finally, memosome, that's a term I coined following chromosome. Think about chromosomes making up the overall gene pool of an organism. And when there's sexual reproduction, chromosomes split and recombine in different ways. This was actually an extraordinarily powerful leap in evolution because it meant new combinations could be tried from proven components. You didn't just have to wait until random mutations of every individual gene happened to come up with a combination that was better than what existed. Most mutations are maladaptive. Most mutations actually are worse, make things worse for the organism. So that's a pretty slow process. But through sexual reproduction, you can recombine proving building blocks in novel ways. And so taking that concept to the meme pool, imagine organizations with memetic signatures composed of memesomes, and somebody else may have a different idea about how to do this. And so they can combine, they can split and recombine memesomes to create entirely new types of enterprises, but built on proven components. So they're not doing everything from scratch. There's relationships between parties and memes, and they come in different flavors, and I'll talk about more of them. One is stewarding a meme. So it's important, a steward for a meme is someone who really feels a sense of responsibility to that meme, to describe it, to articulate it, and to help nurture its manifestation in the world. Another type of relationship is to resonate with a meme. You may find that there's just a heart connection, and it's a pretty lightweight connection. You can say, wow, that speaks to me, I resonate with that meme. Examples of meme include declarations. So there's like the Fuji Declaration, the UN Declaration on Human Rights, the Conscious Business Declaration. So another thing you can do in the MAP database is put declarations in there, and then people can sign them, which is sort of a public statement of support for that declaration. And then investors can actually choose to invest in memes. And I'll explain later what that really means and how that works. The third major database, the third major component is the enterprise one, and at its core is service, and we'll be doing a deep dive in service next week. But parties' relationship to enterprise include being suppliers of services and also requesters of services. So a person or organization can offer services to others, and they may also avail themselves of services provided by others. Services are delivered via venues, and those venues are delivered to personas. A persona is kind of an abstraction of a collection of needs, a shared set of needs. When we design services, we have personas in mind. People actually are much more complex. People are very complex, rich beings. And so people can adopt different personas. But when we design things, they're aimed at okay, I'm getting a little soundtrack there.
Sorry.
That's all right, Paul. I thought you were trying to get my attention. Didn't
it only works. My sound works. My chat doesn't work. I can't give you comments. I'm just listening. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't even know the was working. So
that's okay. Yeah, actually, I'm not even seeing you in the list here.
Yeah, I know. I don't see myself either, but I'm here, and I'm going to send you an email with all my comments. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. And sorry you can't. Sorry you're having technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So services really are about exchanging resources. It's a flow between the service requester and the service provider. And services express or suppress memes, just as genes are suppressed or expressed in biological organisms. Services deliver outcomes, and outcomes have manifestations, which is sort of the measurable expression of a meme. So if some organization says, we express this meme, how would you know? And so the manifestation, the outcome manifestation is basically a measurement of the degree to which the desired outcomes are being achieved. So that's kind of a deep dive technically into what's going on in the database. Don't worry about it if it didn't make all sense to you. I'll be, sort of reinforcing this multiple tours through this material, but that's sort of the conceptual underpinnings of the map. If we look at the architecture, it's all built on the cloud, of course. The three core databases we just looked at, global cross-sector meme pool covering all sectors that we talked about. On top of the core database are a set of services. This is not an exhaustive list here, it's representative, but there'll be subscription and notification services offered by the map. There'll be service choreography, the ability to stitch together these services in different ways dynamically. Knowledge service is a key component of the platform. The global meme pool services providing access to the meme pool, basic identity management, crypto contracts, central feature. They enable a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm blessed to have Dirk Norton on the call today, who's got a brilliant implementation of crypto contracts that we hope to leverage. There are also integration services. So on top of that are some portals, a more mobile portal and then a web browser type portal. And so for many of these thought leaders, the belief is that this is maybe all they will need. Instead of having to create their own websites, manage their own email subscription lists, they can just register information in the map and use the map portal for both their access and also the people that they are interacting with, whether it be customers or suppliers or donors or beneficiaries of nonprofit services or what have you. But other alliance partners will want to integrate at a service level, and they may choose to have their own portals, their own venues for engaging and inspiring their customers, but they can still leverage all of the services and databases that we have in MAP. Another component of the alliance is something that we're tentatively calling the Global Wellbeing Institute. Roger Briggs, who's on this call, is heading up the launch of the Wellbeing Institute, and I'll show you how that fits into the story in a moment. So that's just kind of a quick picture, fairly high-level look at what the architecture of the map looks like. So who will the Global Wellbeing Alliance benefit? Well, since we're trying to co-create a better civilization, and since our problems are global, we better benefit the Earth. We better have a view that we are all in this together. And we do. But to make that more concrete, we better actually find value propositions that are compelling to individuals and groups, or this will just be foilware, just concepts in a slideshow. So we have identified a number of personas that we are building value propositions and capabilities for. Thought leaders who are on the shift, coming up with these new models in all sectors of the wheel of co-creation. Media producers that help them get the story out. And that's just one example of evolutionary storytellers, visual artists, sculptors, songwriters, painters, literary poets, full panoply of artistic creators who are helping to tell the evolutionary story, because that's really what's compelling. What I'm giving you tonight is a bunch of concepts, but what really makes it come alive are stories. So evolutionary storytellers are a key part. All aimed at helping disillusioned individuals become awakened and informed individuals to get activated to their personal purpose, supporting social entrepreneurs, supporting awakened investors, people who have acquired financial wealth and are looking for a place to invest that's not just creating more of the same. So they've been awakened. They've achieved a recognition that the current systems aren't working, and they're looking to invest their wealth in something that will make a difference. So we're building specific value propositions for awakened investors to help fuel what you see on this chart. Meme certifiers. Many of the memes I showed you actually have whole certification bodies. So cradle to cradle, in order to earn the ability to flash that trademark, you need to actually go through a certification process with the cradle to cradle organization. Same with fair trade, same with no GMO and so forth. And ultimately enterprise co-creators. And we're going to do a deep dive on enterprises in next week's session. But that's really where it starts to get interesting. So watch that space. So how might this work? So I'm going to look at the disillusioned, awakened, informed outcomes, those first transformations that we talked about. And this kind of gives you a flavor of how the alliance might actually work. So one of the venues within the alliance, as I mentioned, is this Global Wellbeing Institute. Roger Briggs is heading up. And that's going to be both virtual and physical. So there will be physical spaces, physical venues. And the idea there is to host summits aimed at pulling together these holistic cross-sector understanding of shared requirements, build consensus around what the new designs need to look like. What are the designs? And there's many of these thought leaders out there. The idea is to get them together around specific initiatives. And then that becomes a key source of input to this global meme pool. So they're basically the stewards stewarding memes into the meme pool, the outcomes of these summits. Those same thought leaders can also use the web portal provided by MAP. The meme stewardship services allow them to create their own memes in the database. And so a key thought here is that instead of wasting time really arguing with others about whose idea is better, the idea here is the map allows you both to put your ideas, put your memes in the meme pool, and let those that resonate with them, those that naturally resonate with your memes will gravitate towards your memes. If nobody resonates, then you're probably not going to be effective in the world. So let the evolutionary algorithm, if you will, let the test of where resonance happens be the measure of what ideas work in the world, rather than, as I say, arguing about it. So with the meme stewardship services, you'll be able to put your memes in the meme pool, and you'll also be able to do cross-sector searches. So you'll be able to search across the meme pool to find memes. Another component of the Alliance is multimedia production facilities. So another member of our team, Sherry Arnold, has a sense of agency company that provides, among other things, a whole range of services actually, but in this case, video production facilities, the people and processes basically to create high quality video content. So media producers can take the memes that are coming out of the summits and create video content, immersive stories. And Sherry also has an internet TV channel. So we're offering through the map an internet TV channel that allows the delivery of multimedia content and dedicated content channels. So imagine each sector in the wheel of co-creation having a content channel dedicated to sharing what's working, what's emerging, what are people doing, and making a difference in this sector. And then it'll be linked to the memes database. So if you want to do a deeper dive, you maybe have been intrigued by some video content you saw on the TV channel and you want to go deeper, you can go explore that meme in the meme pool in MAP. And conversely, if you come in through the meme pool and doing a search and find something of interest, it's not quite making sense to you, you want to see how is this really working in the world, what does this really mean, tell me the story of this, there'll be links to video content that expresses that meme artistically. So we think that that enables disillusioned individuals to become both awakened through searching the meme pool and through the TV channel, and also this is just representative. There are other services we're planning on injecting here, including course delivery services, some sort of learning management system capabilities are also part of the plan here, just not shown. We haven't quite figured out the design of those yet. So what are some of the benefits of this? Well, I mentioned we're trying to build value proposition for each of these personas. So looked at through the lens of a thought leader, why would they want to engage with the map? Well, the first thing it does is it broadens their reach to a global audience. This is an internet platform that's available around the globe. It allows them to focus on their core vision. So rather than having to build their own IT discipline, to find and manage their own technical skills, rather than having to deal with the operational hassles of managing their own website, their subscription lists, e-commerce hassles, and so forth. This is a shared platform that they can use. They don't have to build, and it's a platform that is a world-class level. That's our focus. It's not built yet, but that is our intent. So that they can focus on what their core vision and mission is and not have that overhead. And so it also enables them to tell their story using video content without the upfront capital investment in production studios or delivery channels. So the whole alliance brings the production facilities and the internet TV channels, for use without them having to build them themselves. Finally, it fosters a broader connected community that enables cross-fertilization with other thought leaders and collaborative opportunities in the summits, and in the fact that everybody's memes are going in the same meme pool, so they can just start discovering things themselves. So that's kind of the value proposition for thought leaders. For disillusioned individuals, the value proposition here is really a one-stop shop experience. So instead of having to do Google search and then go visit Barbara Marx Hubbard's website and then Bruce Lipton's website and then Elizabeth Sartoris and then Ellen Watkins and then Ken Wilber and ... all of this content is being funneled together, if you will, through one integrated web experience. It offers a multi-sensory immersive experience. That's the vision. And so the value proposition is quite simply, it awakens you to the possibility that a better civilization is possible. It also enables them to direct their own learning journey. So people are at different places and have different needs. So the idea is they can control their own pace and they control the direction. They can decide which areas they want to explore. It also offers, though, because everything's together, it enables both deliberate discovery, where you're looking for something and you find it, but also discovery of adjacent things. So you might be watching one video on a channel, and then another one comes on after it. You had no intent to watch, but suddenly you find some compelling appeal to that video content, completely accidentally. And similarly, you might be searching the meme pool and discovered things that you didn't even know existed. You weren't really looking for them, but you discovered them by accident. So we support both that sort of serendipitous discovery as well as deliberate discovery. And then finally, it allows you to go deeper, to be informed about the systemic causes of our crises and most importantly, all these many positive alternatives. That's the benefits to individuals. To media producers, it allows them to express their creative talents in support of their values. So rather than making the next McDonald's commercial, maybe they can use their talents to tell the story of some powerful, exciting meme. And that really is aligned with the vision we have for everyone, which is to align their economic self, what they use to generate income to feed their family and so forth, align that with their essential self, with their core evolutionary purpose. So if we look briefly at the informed to connected shift, the Institute can offer workshops, community outreach, consensus building services. The portal will offer notification and subscription services, so you can subscribe, for example, to memes. And as new information emerges about those, you can be notified. I could go into depth on that, on how we do notifications different and how we really put the user in charge instead of the notifier in charge, but I'll leave that for another time. The portal will include discussion forums, so you can engage with each other on topics and go into whatever depth and whatever interconnection emerges there. And of course, links to social media. So there's the ability to post to various social media platforms. There may also be event notifications and broadcasts on the TV channel, so that can also be a notification mechanism. Benefits there, I'll go through these pretty quickly. Fosters a broader connected community. You feel more connected is the essence of this. So that takes us to the next transformation, moving from connected to activated. And so those first three, awaken, inform, connecting, tended to be about seeing the big picture, seeing the whole, connecting to oneness as a whole, seeing the global nature of our problems. Activation is really about connecting individually with your purpose. So nobody else has your unique combination of genes and memes. No one has your life experience, your life situation, your educational background, your professional background, your creative impulses. So how do you bring those together? How do you align those? And we believe there are as many forms of activation as there are beings in the universe. And so one of the core values of the Alliance is that we honor all forms of activation as sacred. all are expressions of the creative impulse that has given rise to the universe and all life. In other words, they are all differentiated expressions of oneness. So what are some examples? One is just activating personal well-being. And that's going to depend on where you stand sort of in Maslow's needs hierarchy. So if you're at a subsistence level, you're starving, you don't have shelter, you might be in a refugee situation, then your needs are going to be very, very different than if you're, a professional with healthy family and a nice home and so forth. So I'm only going to give a few examples. I can't cover, obviously, that full spectrum of needs, but a couple of examples of activation in the personal space would be both in the individual subjective quadrant. So you might find out about mindfulness practices, prayer practices. In the it space, you may discover nutritional changes that you can make for yourself. You may discover physical practices that you relate to, whether it be yoga or tai chi or dance or exercise. And also there's a lot of emerging neuroscience and some very interesting biofeedback techniques that are proving very effective. And so you can discover those in the map. Another example would be frequency holders. So again, this is to connect with everyone, and everyone has a role to play. And some people are really, and there's a good quote from Eckhart Tolle. Some people, he uses the term frequency holder. I've also heard resonance holder. Their function is to anchor the frequency of the new consciousness. It really is this worldview shift that needs to happen. And some people, that is their calling, is to generate the consciousness, to explore it, to energetically propagate that consciousness in their daily life and in how they interact with others. They're really kind of focusing on the being end. And a good example of this, and I don't know if Todd was able to join us tonight, but Todd Jason Goldfarb has this beautiful application called the Amplifield. Check this chat real quickly. His vision is to create an online Sangha. And so I don't know if you've seen that or not. Here's a picture, here's a screenshot of the Amplifield. It's this beautiful image of the earth. If you look closely, you'll see little white dots. That represents people that are logged into the Amplifield. On the left-hand side, people can type in intentions. As I happen to use this as part of my personal practice, I will put in an intention before I meditate in the morning. I'll just put it in the Amplifield, then I'll go do my meditation. And then people can amplify others' intentions. So here's an intention I put in, and you can see these people hit this little amplify button and amplified my intentions. It's just a lightweight way of sort of sending energy towards that intention. And it's an interesting way to connect in community as opposed to just a personal practice. So it really touches both the I and the we quadrant. So I was inspired by that on the map. That's what to offer this resonate option on memes. So people will be able to resonate with memes in the meme pool. Some other activation examples. Awakened investors can resonate with memes that speak to their heart. They can find organizations that are expressing the values and memes they care about. And then they can choose to invest in the organizations whose memeism they really feel a deep inner calling to support. And activated individuals, as we mentioned earlier, can sign declarations, can resonate with memes in the meme pool, can discover organizations expressing memes they care about, and can seek roles within organizations whose meme zone, again, they feel a deep resonance with. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap up in about 2 minutes, and so we have at least a few minutes for discussion. And I'll give you a quick preview of what's going to happen next time. But just as an example of a memeplex that's emerging, these are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. So imagine finding this on the map, and you could actually click on these. These are all hyperlinked, so you could go drill in and see what is that meme really about. So which of those memes do you resonate with? They're all good, but are there some that you particularly find that you're drawn to? Then you could go resonate with that meme. Here's another memeplex. This is the Conscious Business Declaration. This was created by a collaboration of Humanities Team, the Club of Budapest in Europe, the Fowler Center for Business as an Agent of World Benefit at Case Western Reserve, and the Goy Peace Foundation. So they've articulated this sort of prelude, this commitment to these 7 principles. And they're in the process of getting businesses and individuals to sign this business declaration. So as you read these, do you feel in yourself a greater sense of liveness emerging? Do you resonate with one or more or all of these means? So to make this a little bit more concrete, and we'll wrap on this, I'm going to start telling a fictional story, and I'll weave this through this time and next time, of Juanita, the social entrepreneur. So she's been awakened, informed, and connected, and she feels an inner calling to discover her own role. And she believes that companies can play a major role. So she uses the map portal, and she discovers that conscious business declaration. And it really resonates with her, so she signs the declaration. And she feels moved to start her own conscious organization that helps her manifest her vision of healthy food for healthy communities. So where we'll pick up next time is Juanita searching the meme pool. Kind of, so what might that feel like? How do you actually use the map? How would Juanita use the map to create this conscious organization? So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing. It looks like some people had to drop. And Garth is asking for a copy of the slide deck in PDF format. Yes, I intend to share the videos. Not everybody could make it tonight, and even if you did, if you wanted the videos, I do intend to share them. But let me pause there and unmute everybody. Unmute. There we go. Okay. So we actually didn't get quite as far as I thought we might tonight, but on the other hand, I knew that it was going to be tight. So I do want to pause there. I can show you kind of what's coming up for next time as a teaser, but let me just pause there and see if there's any feedback or comments or suggestions. Was the pace too fast, too slow? Do you like what you hear? Do you have questions?
Steve, can you hear me? This is Paul.
I can.
Okay, I think I'm on video now. I can see myself. I don't know if you see me or not.
I can, Paul.
Okay, I don't know what happened. I couldn't chat, but I wrote up notes and emailed them to you. But yeah, would you please send me the presentation? So it's a lot to think about.
Yes, I realize it's a lot to try and take in one setting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
This is Judith. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes, Judith. Welcome.
I thought this was brilliant and very, very helpful. And I'm one of those people that alternates between being disillusioned and being activated. So I'm going to make use of this, this process, I'm sure. But I'll tell you, one of the thoughts that I had while you were going through this is how it's being balanced at the same time by Donald Trump's speech.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, perfect timing.
I just love the example. This is the functional, the whole, and what a nice balance in our field right now.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that synchronicity there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you managed to tear yourself away, you all, from the Republican convention.
Oh, this is way better.
That's great. Yeah.
Steve, this is Carol Ryan, and I know that there are other groups trying to, kind of pull together. And so how will this play with other efforts that are seeking to find that, thread of commonality and how can we join, networks of networks?
Mm-hmm.
This will be a network of networks and player in this space, but maybe you can just speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, we very much, I'll answer that several different ways. And next time I will say that we go into a lot, you know, the whole story of interconnected enterprises globally and how we can really foster that kind of interconnection, I will be going into in more depth. But basically, there is lots of great stuff happening, and but it tends to be kind of isolated. And so, you know, we see ourselves as helping to foster those interconnections. So we haven't a big presence out there now because, you know, this isn't built yet. So I'm sharing this with, you know, a small group of friends and family, but we're really in the early stages of building this. So until we have something to share, we're not really trying to get the message out there widely. But once it is out there, then, you know, I think we're going to rely on attraction more than promotion. We're going to rely on connection through, you know, very influential groups like Humanity's Team that has a broad platform to lots of people around the world and lots of awareness about what's going on, and others, you know, connected in this community to find out about the others and then just bridge relationships with them and support each other. So it's if others are out there doing it, Roger and I were having this conversation today, that leaves, rather than seeing it as a problem or seeing it as, oh, somebody else has solved it, they've, you know, they're a competitor. No, quite the opposite. If they've already done it, then we don't have to. So we're just filling in the areas, the glue to tie these things together. And if somebody's already got a great network of networks going, you know, we're not going to put the barriers to entry of they have to re-implement everything. You know, we'll put wrappers and find ways to interconnect.
Right. What an architecture.
Great question.
Steve, this is Eric. I just was along that line. So you have already started implementing parts of this?
I would say we start designing parts of it. We're just going to be moving into a prototyping phase over the next 6 months or so.
How many people are working on the development of the software?
Depends on how much funding I get, which I don't have yet.
Right. Yeah.
Close, but not quite there. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you need volunteers.
How much an effort do you think it would be? How many, like, do you have any idea of what the labor effort would be to develop it?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on the business model now, and I am talking to some potential investors. And of course, the first thing that requires that I do is figure what is the cost to get to this milestone. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg right now because I'm trying to find out where that sweet spot is, where the first milestone that has, you know, significant impact, but is still sort of a minimal viable product. So depending on how far out I aim, I'll need more money and more people to get there. So it's you know, it's still pretty early in that investigation.
Yeah.
All right. Steve, this is Janet.
Hi, Janet.
You are one smart cookie, bud.
Thank you. It wasn't just me.
This presentation is just knock your eyes out good. It really is. So bless you for doing all this work. And if there's anything I can do to help you, just let me know.
All right. Well, I will extend the invitation to everybody on this call. This will really be what we get into next time. And by the way, I do have screen mock-ups that'll make this more concrete. And I will be talking a little bit more about the business model and kind of a little bit more specifically what the current status is next time. But I would extend the invitation to everyone to, again, you know, check in with your own personal calling. And if you feel a connection to any part of what I'm sharing, then reach out and let's see what we can co-create together. So, you know, one of the things that's emerging in this space is many, many different kinds of co-creative partnerships. So it's not limited to just, you know, the typical employer-employee relationship. You know, so lots of different ways for people to contribute, and I'll be getting into more of that next time.
Steve, this is Diane, and I continue to feel the the co-creative potential as you speak. I mean, I feel it somatically, and I really trust this process, and it's very exciting to me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Diane.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I concur. This is Alain, and this is
Yeah, it's great, Steve. Thank you. I have to go. Very nice to talk. It's a great talk.
Good to see you again, man.
You too.
Alon, I think you got cut off there.
That's okay. I agree that this is very much needed, and I think you're off to a great start. And I would want to contribute to that. I don't know how yet, but it's right on.
Well, you already have Alon, as has Diane, as has Kathleen and Lynn and Roger and many other people on this call. So look forward to the next chapter unfolding.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have to sign off too.
Good. Okay. Well, we are over time, so thank you once again. I will make the video available at some point, and again, I really hope you can join next week. It's lots more of this story. From my perspective, the really exciting part of the story is still yet to come. So hope you can join next week. Look forward to your feedback then.
Same time, right?
I too.
Same time. Yes.
Thank you,
All right.
Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody.
Hi,
Yeah,
Mansoor.
Zoom.
Hello.
It's Carol from Humanities Team. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Good.
Take care. Good night, Penny.